Welcome to Relative Mentality. I am Jack,
I am Joe.
and we are not here to be therapists. We're here to be family. Today, we are giving the tea on holidays.
Oy vey, here they come. It's holiday time is around the corner. I think even just before we started doing this, we low-key talked about how stressful the upcoming holidays can be and like the pressure of it and all of those things. So I'm so glad that we're doing this particular episode at this time and like trying to help people be prepared because I don't know about you, girl, but it takes a lot of work for me to be ready to do family holiday stuff.
What I think is interesting is it does seem to be a universal, our family is massive.
Mm,
I, in particular, came from, divorced parents. So then you have all of the different Thanksgivings, Christmases, all of that. But it's like everybody deals with it. And it's just
mm,
even if you love Christmas, even if you love Thanksgiving, if you're in the States, it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I love it. But then I have to make the food, buy the presents, all of that, see people that you might not want to see, but you're like, your family or family in law. It's so funny how it does feel like such a universal thing. And even like globally too, where it's like, not
yeah.
every country, well, obviously, no other country celebrates Thanksgiving when we do or at all. But Christmas is something that's relatively universal or, whatever later in the year holiday that has presents or not, or, and it's still like, yes, even birthday parties, you're like, shit. If you go to a friend's birthday party, you're like, my ex is probably going to be there. Like, we have friends. And so it's like, there's just something about a gathering of people that can bring out the best and the worst of people. I
Yeah.
have found.
And to make, like you said, things that you really actually love not
Hmm.
feel so great. I totally got this from my mom. I'm like a cooker sort of person, like a cooking person. And so I cook whenever there's a holiday or something like that, I always do too much. And because I'm from a giant family, I also generally cook enough food for an army even though I only ever hang out with like six other people. So
Yeah.
it's like that thing of me being in the kitchen all day, like cooking, and I'm being stressed, and then I mess something up, and all of those things. And it takes something that I love and I want to do for these people because I love it and I love them. But also at the same time, I'm like becoming embittered about the fact that I'm on my like sixth hour in the kitchen and I still have so much more that needs to be done.
Well, and depending on whether or not how the family operates. Like I know like how our family roughly operates, but it's like other people with their families, it's like sometimes the same person who cooks is the same person who cleans. And it's like so you have to mentally
Mm,
prepare for those 6 hours of cooking and at least 3 hours of cleaning. And it's just
yeah.
like this was my punishment for for hosting. And then you're like, fuck, okay, can someone else do it next time? But you also don't want that because I don't know, there's also when you're hosting, there's the whole you don't get to leave whenever you want because it's your home.
Yeah.
So if your social battery just ends, you're just like, you can do the old Midwestern like, well,
Well,
looks like it might be time to, start cleaning up and or something like that. And then all of a sudden people skedaddle. They're like, okay, you know what? I gotta go feed my fish or whatever. Like it's just I feel like there's a lot of like preconceived notions on like just being selfless during these times. And it's an interesting thing to have to balance.
yeah, which is already sort of built into our DNA, as we've discussed before, this idea of being selfless. So the holidays become extreme version of that. Like it's very easy to fall into those unhealthy patterns that we already sort of do, but to like times 10 because it's the holiday or there's more people or right. So again, like I said, maybe only like six people ever come to my house, but if I go to a family event with our family back in Ohio, there's going to be 30 people at least, if not many more. And I should explain when I say 30 people, that's a small gathering. When we were teens, it was not uncommon to be in the 90s to
Yeah.
have like huge amount of people come to Christmas or these sorts of things. And so now we're in the era of our small family stuff, which is like 30 to 40 people. And I know that some people are like, that's more family than I even have. Like the extended family, whoever, that's like more than I even have. Um, yeah, like that pressure is really built up because it's not just a few people, it's like tons of people, tons of responsibilities as far as like who do I talk to? And as you sort of said before, I don't really want to talk to this person, but like it's Christmas and how do I avoid them the entire time if I don't want to talk to them? Or like the other thing about holidays, like substance use is up. That's not just our family, that's a classic holiday issue, is like someone who comes and gets real loose, and then that can cause its own drama, or then they don't have a filter and they're saying weird stuff, and it like can make the whole situation very awkward and uncomfortable as well.
It ties back to the whole thing where I was, mentioning that the feeling around the holidays is so universal. I don't even know how many movies about holidays, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or Thanksgiving or, whatever, New Year's, and you have everything from like the romance to, the comedy. What's the Chevy Chase film where he's the dad with
Like
Christmas?
National Lampoon's
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, and he just like loses his absolute mind. And it's
Yeah.
like, yes, that's an extreme version to play up for the comedy, but I'm like, I'm sure that there are people that like have some things because at the end of the year,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
you've had a year and you're like, I just want this to go well, just one thing.
right. And like you said, it can be for different holidays, like maybe it's
Mhm.
Lunar New Year, something like that, whatever it is that your family celebrates. Or it could be for weddings, or we always get together for grandma's birthday, whatever it is, that sort of annual or regular get together where everyone sort of comes together and there's this higher level of pressure, stress, frustration, all of the lovely feelings.
Oh yeah, and I want to do a quick callback and also explain where our family does something because we are so large that I did not realize that it was not common. You might be asking yourself, Jack, Joe, how did you know that there were 90 people? Or how did you know that there are 30 people? I'd love to tell you. Um, Apparently, again, it was weird when I found out this wasn't common. After, we've talked about how we were raised Catholic. After we say grace, because mind you, we say grace around the food around the table, all circled up. So
Right. I
we
think that's an
all holding
important part to
hands.
mention, is that
Yes.
first somebody goes around. My mom was usually the person, but now it's just who I don't know, whoever, and just kind of says, circle up, circle up, circle up around the house to every person that's there. And then we all get in a giant circle around the food, around wherever we can fit all however many people, and lock hands and pray, which
And then
feels a little
usually,
culty. Feels, I you have to warn
listen,
people before they come, because if not, it really does feel like a moment where it's like, uh-oh, this family I've never met before is about to sacrifice me. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get out. Like, they've all
I
circled up
mean,
around me and started praying, chanting.
it is one of those things where I'm like, we could definitely have a whole episode on religion and the cult like behaviors. And the joke I always do is it's like, what's the difference between a cult and a church? And it's like the PR ultimately, and especially with Catholicism and all that, and with firsthand experiences. But yeah, so we all circle up, we pray, and then one of the ants, usually, oftentimes the one that initiated the circle up, starts counting. And so then one by one in a row, you say your number. And so, and when there's the teeny weenies that can't say it, you always go like, 23, 24, and then the next person says 25.
like
It was a
like
shock to me that it was
very
a shock to people.
very primary school, like let's line up and count how many of us there are. And so yeah,
Yes.
then we do like the family count, and then we also do announcements, which almost every year your mom announces that she's not pregnant. um
Yeah, it's true.
feel
She
like
does
that
do that.
happens. I think that happens maybe a little bit less now, but like definitely there's tongue in cheek to it. But again, we're sort of all together and in this very like almost like we're dedicating ourselves to the family moment because yeah, there often are so many of us that you can't necessarily be expected to be able to sit down and have chat time with people because that has happened to me so many times where I go to say goodbye and I realize there are like multiple people I didn't even speak to the
Oh yeah.
entire day because there's just so many people to talk to. And, you know, everybody's got their favorite cousin or favorite aunt or whatever, like the people you really want to spend that time talking to. So
Oh
then it's
yeah.
hard because then there's like other cousins, and that's the other thing. We don't all fit in a room necessarily,
Right.
depending on the size. So like there are people in other rooms and I'm like, man, I forgot you were even here. So the one moment where we're all together and we really all see each other is this very strange um circling up and praying and sort of catching up moment.
Oh yeah.
Did you
And well, and
you didn't realize other people didn't do that? You thought
no,
other people did that?
it just it was one of those things that I at that time I hadn't been really elsewhere, and I never thought about the fact that we didn't do that at my dad's. Never put that together. So then I was just, it was more just me talking about like, oh, there was this amount of people and we know that because we counted. And someone was like, what does that mean? And I was like, what does that mean? What do you mean you don't know what I mean? And so then I explained it. And they're like, oh my God. And I was just like, oh yeah, no, that, because I even mentioned it. I think it was like, it was supposed to be a big holiday and there was only like 60 some people there. And I was like, so it was kind of low numbers. And they were
Yeah.
like, that's crazy. But a prime example is one of the Thanksgivings I went to my partner's mom's family's Thanksgiving. His aunt and uncle, um, his grandma, and his mom, and him and I, we all sat at a table. And
One
I was
table.
one table, and the food was on the table. And I was like, that's weird that I could just have a conversation with everybody. Because, mind you, also going back again to the different rooms, we often have a lot of different, like, fold out tables that are in different rooms because there's so many of us. So,
Yeah.
there's the one cousin's house where she had tables in the basement, and then there was like the dining room that had a table or two. Like, and then there's sometimes where they put the extra tables out in the garage and they put a heater out there.
Mhm.
We have so many people that there's so many tables all of the
Yeah.
time. So many.
And again, not just separate rooms, sometimes separate floors
Oh
of
yeah.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
I know you don't remember the farm like a ton, but like
Yeah.
the farm where our parents grew up while our grandma still had that house, there were two floors. So there would be like the younger, some of the cousins would be like up on the second floor and like they would spend the whole time up there. And then there's like people in the living room, and then there's people in the kitchen, and there's people in the dining room. And that was in winter when it was too cold. If we do things like other holidays, like 4th of July, say, then we've got people outside, we got people all over the place.
Oh yeah, and especially with the farm. I mean, they had a when our parents were living there or when our moms were living there, it was a functioning barn. But like by the time, they had farm animals and whatnot, by the time we were around, there weren't really farm animals, but there's a shit ton of hay that you could still play in, even though you weren't supposed to. So like the kids are God knows where. But then like,
Yeah.
and talking about the older cousins, it's like because I remember the pool table upstairs. And so the
Yeah.
older cousins and I'd want to play with them, but I can't play pool. I can barely see over the table. And then I'm
Yeah.
lame. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Which also leads to another thing, which is like this idea with so many people when we would do these holiday things, there's also this pressure, I don't know, pressure or just expectation that like we're handling children as a village. So like
Mm-hmm.
very many times older cousins were taking care of the younger cousins. If we're out in the barn, I don't ever remember any of the adults coming into the barn. But there were older cousins who would come to the barn and like be supervising us, or like you said, upstairs playing on the pool table. Adults didn't really come up there as much as the teens and the other kids, and there'd be like a group of us younger kids in the yellow room, and then There'd be like some of the older kids playing pool. So there was also a lot of if there's a kid around doing something they shouldn't be doing, who knows
Hmm.
where their parent is at? They could be in any one of these multiple rooms with any of these dozens of other people. So like there's a culture of, yeah, like I don't care whose kid you are, I'm about to tell you to stop.
Oh, and as the kid, you listen. There was
Yep.
no, you're not my real mom or you're not my mom. You
Oh
listen.
no.
And again, especially if it was your mom, and I'm like, okay. And I was like, I would rather deal with my mom than your mom. I was just like, because again, your mom was so like just stern faced, and I'm like, huh. But that's also because single mom of 4 kids, like that's you
she
had to
just
be.
didn't she just didn't have the patience or the energy for any of it. And it was clear that she did it. She was like, don't do it, don't do it.
Yeah, and don't
So
make me repeat, don't do it. Like that's
yeah, 100%. But so like I've even seen like that be interesting in our family in more recent times where some of the our cousins' kids haven't grown up in that
mm,
environment. So then
mm,
for them, it's really weird for a random person in the family who maybe they don't even know that well to tell them, like, don't do that. Or, you know, take this and go do this with it. To like give them directions, give them orders. And they're like, who the fuck are you? Like
right.
literally, do I even know your name? Who are you? But like it's definitely, I've seen that be difficult because that's still so much the culture that
Hmm.
some of the family who has lived further away and or it doesn't come home as much or like isn't in those situations, that can
Um,
be really like off-putting for the kids to have
yeah,
just like random people tell them what to do.
yeah,
Where again,
yeah.
even if I didn't know who you were, if we were at the farmhouse and you were an adult, I knew to do what you were gonna say because I knew you knew my mom. Right? I'm like, you know
Yeah,
my mom, and as you were just saying, I'm not trying to mess with her. So I'm gonna just do
a
what you
100%.
say, whoever you are.
Again, it is so nice to see family, and it's so nice to be able to have those moments of like being able. It's almost like an excuse to see people, and that's really nice. But then there's also like, at least from my end of it, the stress that I feel of like, okay, so now I need to be on my A game, and then it's somewhat sad and frustrating because it's like when I was in college, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing like all of these fun things, and now people are like, oh my God, how are you? I'm like, I pay bills and I work and I have not a fun life, and I'm like, how do I make this interesting? And there's
Yeah.
also like a level of masking that I do, and I try my best to balance what I need as me for my mental health and all of that, but also stay true to myself so that I'm
Mm.
not feeling like I'm betraying myself. So there's a lot of balancing that for sure.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I've had to learn. And I've mentioned before that there's almost a part that feels easier now that my
Hmm.
mom is no longer with us to be more authentic and not worrying, not because I cared what she thought, but because I was worried about the implications, right? I
Hmm.
am a representation of her. So if I'm acting a fool, which I mean, honestly, was I really acting a fool? But if I'm acting a sort of way or I get in trouble, then that's a sort of reflection on her, or she's got to be bothered with it, or all of those things. So I felt a little bit of freedom, but yeah, there is 100% still that like who I am with my family versus who I am like with my friend family, or versus who I am when it's just me and my partner at home. So there's, yeah, sort of code switching, masking, change of how we present ourselves when it comes to these holidays or these family sort of events.
Well, and it's like also I'm like, for all family out there, our family who's watching, I'm not saying I'm a different person. I'm just saying I'm like a diet version of myself.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
It's also just a way to preserve energy because there is a lot going on, especially with our family. And I mean, the nice thing about having so many people there or having the different rooms is I can literally, last time at the family gathering, I was in the living room at one point while most people were outdoors, and I was petting the cat, and it was so nice. I was like, we both need this. This is nice for both of us.
I remember that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because at one point I saw you and I was like, okay, this is also fine. Like you and I, we could talk, and I was like, this is fine. But it's because there's like a whole bunch of hullabaloo happening outside, which is just the cacophony of 1,000 voices having 6,000 different conversations.
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
it's definitely overstimulating, and it's so nice to be able to put that type of wordage to it, you know.
Mhm.
And I'm also very grateful that mental health at a societal level has become more in the zeitgeist. So even our family, whether or not they prescribe to um, kind of empathizing and sympathizing with certain things, they are at least aware of it. So
Yeah.
if it's like, I need a moment, I'm like overstimulated. There's a handful of people in the family that'd be like, okay, they would be fine if I just needed to drop mid sentence and like
Yeah.
fuck off to the living room.
And you know what? Like, I'm so glad you bring that up because it makes me again think of my mom in that she almost always ended up overstimulated at family events. And I don't know that we had that language. And I don't know that I recognized until this very moment that that's what
Mm.
was happening. But she always left exhausted. But like, we get partway through the day and she's like totally overwhelmed, doesn't really want to be there anymore, but feels this responsibility to be there, to get through dinner, to get through gifts, to do the game afterwards, to do all of these things when she's really feeling, yeah, overwhelmed, overstimulated by everything that's going on. And, I could see her sometimes dissociate and like not even fully be there. Or then the drive back home. So we lived kind of like an hour away from where a lot of the family stuff was when I was a teenager. That drive back home, and she's like completely drained, barely making it down 11. So 11, it's a highway, and I should say it is the most boring highway in the entire world, so it's fair to feel tired and to like lapse into like, how do I stay awake on this highway? But now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, that's why she was always so exhausted when we were driving home. Not only had we had a whole day of like being with family, but she had been so overstimulated and like pushing through that and masking so much and doing all of this stuff. Yeah, wow.
And I mean, think about it too with your mom, not as much when you guys lived where that house was, but like when you lived like 10, 15 minutes away. How many cakes, and I'm going to say this lovingly, how many cakes did that bitch make? Like, that's, I refer to women as bitches. I know that's whatever, but like, it's just lovingly, like, how many
Yeah.
cakes, cupcakes,
Mhm.
there
Yeah.
is something very sweet about that. And there's something very like, because you then have that thing that you've been able to, but I'm like, for Thanksgiving, there are some people that celebrate birthdays around that time. So, yes, yes.
Mm.
So, at one point in time, especially at the farm, I remember, it's like, okay, we're gonna make cakes, or in your case, pie, right? I believe you were a pie
Sometimes,
girl
yeah.
for a
Yeah,
while.
pies and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was like, and I guarantee she also made a dish on top of it, like a side dish for the
Oh,
meal
yeah.
itself. So it's like, not only did she have to have the hours of being on and masking and whatever for the actual duration of the get together, but then she also had to spend how many hours prepping beforehand, and especially when it comes
Uh,
to like bringing cakes over, like making sure everything doesn't like slide or fall apart on it, the transfer to it. Yeah, she
yeah,
definitely.
for
I'd be
sure.
tired too. Me
Yeah,
talking about it, I'm getting tired.
for sure. When she made wedding cakes, especially, like
Oh
we would
yeah.
be spending the morning loading up the car, bringing all the cake to where we're going, putting the cake together, all the stuff before the ceremony and stuff even began. Right. So,
Mhm.
like, yeah, there was a lot of prep, and she was that person. She was kind of an early bird too, so she would like get up early and like be cooking and getting everything ready long before I would wake up 10 minutes before we'd leave, and I'd be like, let's go. But she, she definitely had all that stuff. But again, it's that like pressure. How much of it is self-imposed? How much of it is just feeling like there's, yeah, this sense of responsibility again. and really in our family and in a lot of families showing love and caring through the things that we do for people, including making food, presents, doing all of these different things. And it's like, yeah, that takes a lot of time and energy and effort and wherewithal as well, outside of the actual holiday. The days leading up to the holiday are also times full of stress as we're getting all of these things prepared.
Oh yeah, because like for Christmas we do, because there's 1,000 of us, you know, we do like a gift exchange. And so it's like making sure that you know the person that you're getting the gift for, you get the gift, all of that, but then you also need to wrap the gift. And especially if you've got little ones, that means not only are you wrapping the gift for your individual Christmas at your home with your kids, you then have to wrap the presents that you're going to take to the family party for those people. Make sure that you remember whose is whom after you, because usually the way it works is your kids would also pick for different family members, like whoever you
Mm.
submitted into, they also would have to get a gift. So that means if, you know, I just had a baby and it's 2 months old, and but I'm like, oh, get something for my little baby. That means that that little baby's also, which means I'm getting something for some other person. So
Yeah.
it's like having to do all that and then make food and then, you know, make sure everything. And so then you got to load all the bitches up. You got to put them in the car. And then if they're toddler age, then you just want to die the whole time. Like that's when you were talking about it, something I thought of. And again, I say this with love and I say this with respect. It's like our family, we did not grow up as a whole for the most part. We were definitely not wealthy. Most of us sat middle class, lower middle class,
Mm.
all of that. I'm being very generous. So it wasn't like we could give exorbitant gifts. So it's
Mm.
like a lot of what we gave was our time. And that's how we showed love, where it's like, I will do this for you and that for you because I love you and I care for you. I'm not necessarily looking for something reciprocal, but this is how I show that I care and I love. I can't give you, you know, the Taj Mahal, but I can fix your HVAC like
Yeah.
that.
It's acts of service. Like
Yes.
our family love language is acts of service for sure. Whether it's like an uncle who's like, ah, let me fix your HVAC, or the aunt that would be at the holidays who wouldn't eat until they had already washed the dishes from everybody else, even though, you know, we were using paper plates and forks, but it was like, no, we're gonna wash the actual dishes from the pans and all that, like all that stuff. And
Even
well,
if it wasn't like grandma's, like they would,
yeah.
like if one of the aunts brought, you know, like a casserole and had a casserole dish and everyone ate it, or after they put it in like, you know, the country crock cleaned out butter tubs, you know, they would then like wash the person's casserole dish so that you
Yeah.
brought home a perfectly clean casserole dish.
Yeah.
And so that is a nice thing that you wouldn't have to worry about when you went home, but that meant someone had to take care of it. That was on someone's mental plate.
Right. And like, I'm not necessarily missing out because they were doing
Oh
that,
yeah.
but like, kind of like you're sitting over the sink doing a bunch of dishes. But I would say too that, especially back in the day, it was sort of a social thing too, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
like a couple of aunts would be washing dishes and all, you know, I'm just thinking of like lots of little hens in the kitchen doing different stuff. So it wasn't all like, it's not all like, oh, the suffering of this individual person. Like there
Oh sure. So,
is these elements of how it's become part of our socialization and like how we interact with each other as well.
oh yeah.
But that doesn't eliminate the like stress of it, right? It
Oh
might
yeah.
soften it, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate it.
Well, and it's like at the farm in particular, it's like the sink was at one end, but it had a giant counter, and then at the other end of the counter was all the liquor. So it's like, oh, you come and get a drink, and then, oh, there's aunt, blah, blah, blah. And you'd be like, oh, there's this aunt, there's that aunt, there's whatever. Or there'd be some of the uncles sitting at the table just kind of nibbling on some of the food left over.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you can kind of talk there. But then also thinking about it, especially now how a lot of houses that have the parties are more segmented, I could
Mm.
definitely see cleaning the dishes as a way of like, oh, I'm helping. I also need to get the fuck away from some people for a minute, and I need a mental break. I could
Oh
see it
yeah.
be both ways.
Oh, I definitely have cleaned in places because I'm like, I don't want to do this, so I'm just gonna start tidying. Just start
Oh,
picking up dishes and putting things away, and then I don't have to deal with whatever is actually happening. So, yeah, cleaning up as avoidance, very much our brand, very much the Stewart brand.
100%, 100%. It's so interesting with my experience. I don't know how much you had growing up, but it's like I somewhat mentioned, because I had divorced parents, I technically had like 3 to 4 holidays because it was like I'd have, Christmas with mom, Christmas with dad, Christmas with his grandparents, and then Christmas at the farm, or like Thanksgiving with mom, Thanksgiving with dad, but like, we'd have it with the grandparents. So I guess like only 2 Thanksgivings, but it still was like having to bounce around. And then
Oh yeah.
now as an adult, it's like, okay, so now I come from a divorced home. My partner comes from a divorced home. Who are we spending a holiday with? Because a lot of these hoes don't live
Yeah.
close to each other. And then it's like, okay, making sure that, you know, everyone's happy the best that I can. Where it's like, okay, so we'll see these people for this holiday, those people for that holiday. Okay. And trying to do the mental balance of like making sure that I see everyone that I can
Mm,
and trying to make it fair,
mm,
and it's been an interesting thing because again, it's right now, I no longer have to worry about going and seeing my father for the holidays, which also has its own, grief with all of that. But then also on like a benefit that's weird is it's like, well, I don't have to worry about going to South Carolina. Like I don't, that's one state I don't need to go to for a holiday.
yeah.
And so, but trying to balance the other ones, and especially, I won't go too in the weeds with it, but it's like on top of it too, since my partner and I have been married for a minute, there's now the, oh, when are you coming to visit? When are there going to be grandbabies? And I don't
Mm,
want there to be a long distance of not seeing people. So then I show up and it's like, do you have something? Is there an announcement? And I'm like, I don't need that burden on me to then be like,
yeah.
because it's first and foremost, again, this could be a whole other episode. It's like, don't do that. Some people don't want kids, and and some people can't have kids. And it's
Yeah.
like, and some people don't want to have those fucking conversations. So don't make them. Don't put them in a really awkward thing.
You're right. Like, so this like almost undue pressure of like, if you're single, then they're like, are you seeing anybody? If you're with somebody, when you guys getting married? If you're married, when are you having kids? If you have a kid, when are you having another kid? Or if you're in college, what are you going to do with your life? How are your studies? What classes are you taking? What do you like? All of these things where they like want a report of your life in a like in like too small of a moment, right? Like they
Yeah.
want you like need to learn too much in too small of a moment. And not to say it's not sincere, but like there's a level of it that feels less sincere because it's like I also know you are asking this of
Every
everybody.
other cousin. Right.
Every other cousin is getting these same questions. And I know that's like you trying to talk and like, again, it's not a negative thing, but it's just like, it's a lot and it can feel very pressured. And if something negative is going on, it like doesn't necessarily take that into consideration. So, for example, we had a miscarriage and I had originally been putting on this we had been planning to have a reception with just our family. And then I had gotten pregnant and I was like, oh, I can make it like a reception, baby shower, all of this stuff together. So I was putting on the gift list, I put like some baby things. Well, then we lost the baby. So I
Mm.
removed those baby things. But I think either one of the aunts had already seen it or something, but because we hadn't really told the family yet, because it was an early loss. And yeah, we were at like 4th of July or something, and luckily she asked my husband, which I love, she like mentioned it and was like, "Oh, so I saw the baby stuff as a baby," and he like shut her down so quick and was like, "Do not go over there and talk to Joellen about this. Like, this is not. I'm not going to say any more to you about it. Like, it's not happening. I'm not saying anymore. Do not go and talk to her." And I was like, that was because it was one of the honestest, be
Yeah, yeah,
talking.
yeah, yeah. It's
And
like I have an assumption on which aunt it was for
and you're
sure.
probably correct. But like but so like even that, I knew it came from a really good place, right? And like she did not mean any harm by it. And it just lucked out that she talked to my husband, and he shut her down. But like that, again, that's a thing. Like, how triggering would that have been for me? I don't know. But like that
Mhm.
could have been really triggering if she had come up and started talking about, I saw the baby clothes and all these things, and I'm still like dealing with my grief, which is not necessarily a family public grief, right? Like not everybody even knows about that. So like, yeah, that can be a part of it too, is like all those questions, like sometimes it hits sore spots, and it's like things that are uncomfortable to have to talk about. And also it's Christmas, right? So like also we're supposed to be like happy and laughing and smiling, and oh, you had a miscarriage, right? Like it's not, it is like such an awkward time to have some of those conversations. But because that's the like mandatory time for you to be with your family, and one of the few opportunities they might have to ask you some of these things.
Yeah.
So like there can also be that weird dynamic of like, if something negative is happening in your life, almost not wanting to participate because you don't want to have to, yeah, answer questions or whatever about it.
It's one of those things when you were talking about the fact that it's like, here are the basic questions. Yeah, I know you're asking every other cousin this. And I'm like, so this is familial small talk. It's
Mm.
the instead of at a business at a job on Monday morning, oh, what'd you do last weekend? What'd you do last weekend?
Oh,
Did
this
you see
weather's
that
crazy.
game? Right. It's so what's going on? And then again, that's where it's the nothing. I am a capitalist cog in a machine. I go to work, I go to the gym, I eat dinner, I go to bed and rinse and repeat. Sometimes I'll have a little sweet treat and I'll go to like Dunkin' Donuts and change it up and have, a coffee and a bagel instead of waffles. And so there's like a pressure to be exciting and fun, especially because let's be clear, if you look at all of the different cousins, I'm one of the more fun looking ones. So it's like, oh, you little you rebel, what are you doing? And I'm like, I am also stuck in this hellscape that is capitalist America. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not fun anymore.
Yeah, and I
I
think that's
had
a
my
good
college
point.
days.
Yeah,
Like, there's nothing fun I can give you except oh, when are you having kids? And I'm like, I
right.
don't know. It all depends on, I don't know, my body.
And you're right. Like when you're in school, when we're in college, like both of us did theater, we were doing movies, like we had so much stuff going on that was kind of interesting. And
Yeah.
certainly in the last, I don't know, since I got my master's, I haven't acted, I don't do anything that's particularly wild or, fun. And yeah, sometimes I do feel like people come up expecting me to be like, I've got this new show, or I do this thing, or oh gosh, there's so many great stories. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to survive.
Right.
Thanks.
My bills have beaten the shit out of me, so I don't do fun things anymore.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think that also has a good segue into like political landscape and
Hmm.
how the world affects us, but also how there's a good chance we have very different opinions from people who we are visiting for the holidays. So, what does that look like? Like, that is one of those sort of classic holiday ick moments of someone brings their really like extreme opinions or their very like strong opinions to the table of only 10 people. and we're all sitting there and have to listen to them say whatever sort of inflammatory thing it is, or to have those sort of disagreements. So there, I think there's a lot of like conflict that can come with the holidays too, not just about politics, right,
Oh
but
yeah.
like just politics, the world, economics, jobs, like all sorts of different things. And especially in a time like this in the US, where there is such division, we see a lot, or at least we're told we are that divided. Like, I imagine going to the holidays this year would be very stressful, like very overwhelming. You know, I, of course, am not happy that I lost my mom or my stepdad, who also passed a few months before her. Like, I love them. I am in no way happy that they are gone. Is there a tiny part of me that's like relieved that I don't have to have some of these conversations with them, that I'm not going to go home for Christmas and have to like have Fox News turned on and I'm like, oh, great. And then, have to get into a conflict because we're both very strong personalities, strong opinions. My poor mother had to sit in between us, like going at it sometimes. And, usually we ended in as love and we're okay and those sorts of things. But there are moments where I had to leave. Like, there was a time I got out of the car and walked the rest of the way. I mean, it wasn't like super far, to like our family photo shoot because we got into it. Or, I've had to like leave the table or leave the whatever because the conflict could get pretty fiery. There are still families who or have to think about that before any holiday event that they sort of go to. And especially again with substance use being a little higher, like, is Uncle so and so going to get drunk and then start talking about all his beliefs? Or is, cousin whoever about to come and try to teach all of us about how we should be vegan and talk about like their beliefs, and then like we have problems? So yeah, I think there's a lot of that can make the holidays, these family events, also like stressful.
Oh yeah.
Because
Good.
I know who in our family does not agree with me. I know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I also know that in general there are very few times when that directly comes up. And even when it sort of indirectly comes up, we can usually like maneuver around it. I'm thinking of, it must have been after your engagement party, maybe. I don't know. When we were at the uncle's, it was during the summer,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it was me, you, and your husband sitting at one end of the bar because our uncle has a bar in this on his patio. And then there were a couple uncle and aunt sitting over here, and then like a couple cousins over here, and like gender came up and sexuality because I said something about, as a queer woman of color, like, I'm not happy about the fact that I married a cis white man. Like, that wasn't my intention. And so then like they're like, I don't know what cis is. And then the conversation started flowing and there was like some level of ignorance in it. And it was a moment where like I remember me looking at you, you looking at your husband, him looking at me, like we all three of us who are like queer or allies, or I don't know his story actually, but I'm queer anyway.
He's straight.
He's an ally. I know he's an ally.
Yeah.
So,
Ally.
so like the three of us just looking at each other and being like, they're doing their best. God bless them. They're trying to be take in the information that we are giving, and they are trying to inform themselves. But anyway, so like it's not that those different opinions are not there. It's just we are blessed in the way no one is storming in ready to pick that fight, thankfully.
And that's where there's a lot of understanding that comes in, where it's like, because I have seen people who definitely have different beliefs than I do. And at the end of the day, we're all like, we're family and
Mm.
I will protect you and I will do, whatever. And it's like, So in that regard, I experience where it's like, yes, we're divided, but we're also not type of thing where you were
Mhm.
saying, we're being told we're divided. But I've also had different family where it very much so was like divided, and I will not hear what you have to say. And, you're stupid for feeling this way
Wow.
and all of that. And so it's one of those things, again, as a general thing where it's like, they have to hide their identity because, they know their family isn't going to be accepting or it isn't. And it's
Mhm.
like, do I even want to come home? And then,
Yeah.
do I need to spend this holiday alone? Or do I
Mm.
have it? Because even if you have, let's just say, your found family, which I love that term, for the generation who might be watching this that don't know what that means, found family is like your friends that, not blood, that you consider family.
I like to call them family.
Oh, I love that. Yes. If you even have your found family, they might be able to go to their homes for their holidays. And so then you find yourself by yourself, and it's like, do I not see my family because I'm not going to be safe there, or I just don't feel comfortable going, or do I spend my time alone, or, and it's a lot because, again, you see all of this media about how the holidays in general are just this magical time. And when you don't get to have that magic, it sucks, and you can have it for all sorts of different reasons, whether or not you can't go home or you're not able to provide. Like that was another thing that sucked for me for a while is when I moved down to Georgia, I had fucking no money. Like I had enough to live and that was about it.
Hmm.
So trying to give gifts for the holidays, it's like I'm gonna make something. Like I'm gonna figure it out. I'm artsy as hell. I'll make something worthwhile, or I buy things that didn't cost that much money. And I hated it because, obviously my mom doesn't have that much, like it doesn't have a lot, in general, but wants to be able to dote on me. So then I
Yeah.
feel like and that fucking sucks. And so then it's like, well, I hate that I can't give you things in return or give you what I would deem equivalent. And so there's just overall, there's so many emotions that you're actually feeling, emotions that you feel like you should be feeling, emotions that are being projected onto you at all times at a societal or familial level. And you're just like, there's also a whole bunch of other things that go into it as well, where, especially when I lived in Ohio, I had seasonal affective disorder real bad. I also think it's great and fucked up that, it spells sad. But ultimately, what that is, for those who might not know, and you can correct me, and we'll probably go more into this next episode, but it's depression based on the season because, in Ohio, you're getting less sunlight, it's getting colder, you might not be able to go out as much because back home there's a lot of snow. So then it's like, well, now you're stuck in home. And so when I moved down here and there wasn't as much snow, it wasn't as cold, and there was sun in December and January. The first 2 years I lived down here, my anxiety would peak so hard in the winter months, and I could not figure out why. And then I realized, I think it was one day I was driving and the sun just felt so good on my skin. I was like, that's why I'm not used to this. My body
Mm.
wants to be sad, but I'm not sad. So then my body's like, well, why aren't we sad? We should be sad. What are we
Yeah.
missing? And so there was a lot of different things that kind of compounded with that. So it's like, not only do you have the familial aspect or the societal aspect of like needing to see and be around all of these people at this time, the weather can fucking impact your mental health. So now, great, I already feel like God being a teenager. It's like I already feel weird in my body. Things are doing weird shit to me. Like, oh my God, now I have to see family who's going to ask me 1,000 questions that I don't know how to answer, and
Mm.
then now I'm also sad, but I have to be happy and I want to be here. It definitely, there's so much going on. And it's like, yes, you can call it Thanksgiving. Yes, you can call it Christmas. Yes, you can call it New Year's. Yes, you can pinpoint certain things. But there's a lot that happens that I don't think people think about all that much. of like the
Yeah.
societal wise or whatnot. And because on top of it too, once you become an adult, around this time is when you have to start looking at renewing your health insurance. So then you have to think, okay, what are we going to be doing for next year? And it's like, and then on top of it, you're kind of having to mentally prepare for things that are going to potentially happen in the next year, whether or not you start having kids. It's like, oh shit, what are we going to be doing? Or if we need to move next year or something like that. Oftentimes, at least in my personal opinion, I look closer at the end of the year, more ahead. Not that I don't look ahead in general, but it's almost like, okay, what do my resolutions need to be? It just
Ugh,
feels like so much extra pressure.
sorry.
Yeah.
Resolutions are the biggest load of bullshit that have ever been created. I am so anti-resolution. Not because we shouldn't set goals for ourselves, but there's this like really toxic idea of like new year, new me. Like
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going to start the new year and I'm going to totally change this thing about myself. And that's why the majority of New Year's resolutions don't make it past February, if they even make it to February, because basically people are saying, I'm going to make this huge leap and do something completely different. I'm going to start going to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to stop eating sugar completely. I'm going to, I don't know, whatever your goal is, and you're going from 0 to 100. And
Oh, yeah.
and that is a terrible way to build new habits and to make change in yourself. So the idea of resolutions to me is, this has really been since I've been a mental health person specifically, is like, I heard it. I heard it. Don't do resolutions. Like, look for change. And like, yes, we can set the new year as like, hey, this is where I want to start seeing some change. But or even like dry January. Okay, kids,
Hmm.
that's cute, but like that's not necessarily, if you have a substance use issue, being sober for a month during dry January and then just starting back up in February isn't actually going to make that big of a change in your substance use, because you haven't changed the way your brain thinks about the substance. You just were able to push off for a month and like set this goal to make you feel better about your use or whatever. Sorry. That's my just went on
I
a
didn't know
whole.
I pulled a trigger. I did not know
You did.
I pulled that thread.
I was
Oops.
so triggered by that. But going back to the other things we were saying, sorry, is like you're so right. This time of year can be a lot because of weather changes, seasonal depression, as you were saying, and seasonal affective disorder. Part of it too is like, our because it's darker for longer, we start creating more melatonin than we are serotonin. So even if your serotonin generally is fine and you aren't in need of something like an SSRI or some sort of like antidepressant during the winter, that might be different. So there are
Yeah.
a lot of people who 3 4 months out of the year do need to have some medication or some extra assistance, see a therapist, whatever. But that's also a time when it's harder to be staying on your habits and making sure we're making good choices for ourselves, because there's all of this other stuff going on. We talked sort of about expectations. There's this idea that the holidays are supposed to be this beautiful time of light and happiness. So all of this is supposed to be light and joy and all of these great things. And that's what we see in the movies and that's what we see on TV. But we don't take into consideration, like we were saying before, all the work that has to go into that, all the time, all of the money, the amount of money people in the United States spend on Christmas is astronomical.
Mhm.
And even people who are poor, who are living in poverty, feel pressured to provide their families this sort of amazing holiday, right? With all of these gifts and all of the lights and all of those things. It's bankrupting people. It puts people in debt every single year. There are people going into debt because of Christmas.
Well, and
Sorry, we've
I'll
also
say
gotten
something.
another one of my triggers.
No, 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 because I'm about to say something. So if there are little ears that are listening or around, I would say either skip this part for a little bit or make them leave the room. But it's like, people who do struggle, Santa exists. And so it's like, oh, well, Santa got this other kid in school an Xbox or
Yeah.
whatever. Santa only got me socks. And it's like,
Hmm.
so now this kid thinks that Santa hates them. It's like, no, it's because your mom can't afford an Xbox for you. But,
Yeah.
Timmy's mom can. And it's like, so then there's just this thing that happens that, you're trying your best as a parent, but if you can't provide those things, there's a sense of failure. Not that you are a failure, but there is a sense of it where it's like, I couldn't do. So then that's when people go into debt or they do whatever they can to try to give
Hmm.
something to these kids. That's why I very strongly believe, if and when my partner and I have kids, Santa will be providing them like the shirts and the socks. And it's like if there's a fun toy or something like that, that's what mom and dad have given. Because, I don't know what other people's situations are at home, and I don't want them to think that, Santa gives the really cool shit.
Or
Because
you
I
could
just,
just
again,
not
hearing
lie
that
to your
just,
kids. Sorry, I was gonna say, or
no,
you
no,
could
you're
just
right.
not
You're
lie
right.
to
I
your kids
shouldn't,
about a fat guy, a fat white guy who comes down here to me once a
breaking and
year.
entering. Let's be very clear
Yes,
on that. That is, he
yes.
breaks and enters.
Again, that is a whole nother conversation and a whole nother trigger I can go down. Christmas, I find personally to be very activating for these reasons,
Yeah.
because of the expectations, the pressure we put upon ourselves, and the things that we start teaching children really, really early on, like essentially as soon as they hit a Christmas, about Santa and the excess and having lots of gifts and needing to have all of these decorations and all of these things that, right, even before we get to TV and movies, all the books tell us, all the little Christmas books they get talk about. And so there is, yeah, these expectations that your kids are having, not by their own faults in any way. Like they're not trying to pressure you to get them an Xbox if they could understand, but they don't. And so then they are upset because you couldn't do those things for them. So I would rather put myself in struggle than have my kid not get what they want, have my kid be upset. I mean, we could also go into just generally about commercialism, but let's move away so Joellen does not completely spiral on some triggers today.
Well,
But again, it's these expectations of what it is supposed to look like, and people trying to push themselves to meet that. Even with something like Thanksgiving, you're supposed to have a big old turkey, right?
yeah.
Turkeys are not easy to make, and they're not easy to make well. Turkey is like
Speak for
the
yourself.
oh,
I make really good
what was it?
turkey, but
Oh, okay. Well, okay, girl, get it. But like, there, it's not.
no, there's a lot of people that have some dry ass turkeys, and you're like, thank God there's
So
gravy. Like that's
yes, and so like, and there's so many things that can go wrong with the turkey because you also have to get up at like 5 a.m. to put the turkey in or whatever, right? So there's like also these pressures about I have to have a turkey and our table has to be set with this many items and it has to look that way. Okay, if you are a family living in poverty, you can't necessarily afford that. Turkey ain't cheap. Like you may
Mhm.
be able to get, like, I know there's a lot of like donations and stuff and get a turkey that way, but if you have to go and buy a whole big ass turkey, that's not cheap. All the food, all of the special things we're going to buy for the celebration, it's not free and is a lot of times not cheap. So we're also putting a lot of financial strain on ourselves, which again fucks with our emotions, right? If we are feeling that financial strain, we're feeling that pressure of having to be around people maybe we don't want to be around. We feel that like a performance anxiety of this is what it should look like, especially if you have kids and you're like, I want my kids to have these great holidays. Like that is just going to feed in, as you said, to the like seasonal depression. That is just going to feed into the difficulty of it. And sorry, it reminds me of something else I'm going to say, which is our bodies keep a score, right? Our bodies have an internal clock and calendar. So if you, like you said, you got to these first few winters in Atlanta and your body is like, something is wrong, it's because it has been keeping the score and it's trying to prepare you. It's like, uh-oh, it's about to be winter. We better brace ourselves. We better get ready because we know this is about to be a difficult time. So that's why then there's this anxiety there instead of the depression, because, okay, the seasonal affective disorder isn't happening, but your body is still tensed up and like ready to fight, right? And like ready to be like, ooh, depression, blah, blah, blah. So there's these ways that our brains just automatically go into the stress before it even happens. I see so many clients who, yeah, when we're starting to come up to November, like around this time of the year is when these conversations start to happen, for weather and like sun reasons, but also because people know, well, now I have to go see my family. I know that it's going to be gifts and we don't have the money. I know that it's going to be all of these other things. And so the stress level just starts to creep and creep and creep and creep weeks, sometimes months before we even actually get to the holiday. So we've got this level of stress and anxiety. It's like through the roof. And the like fun and satisfaction is not enough to outweigh some of that like negative stuff that we carry.
Yeah, and then you feel bad about it because you're like, I'm
Right.
supposed to be happy.
Like, oh, because you're being a Grinch,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you're not happy, then you're a Grinch.
You're a
And I'm
buzzkill.
like,
Who wants you here? And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
well, great.
I will say I proudly that I am a Grinch, for lots of different reasons. Again, you don't need to go down. Don't pull their strings, Joan. Don't pull their strings. But like, there's, yeah, there's that idea. Are you a joyful, happy person for the holidays? Or are you a Grinch? Are you a buzzkill? Are you a Scrooge? Right? We have all of these ways that we sort of talk down to people if they're not happy and excited about the holidays without knowing what might be behind why they are not happy and excited about it.
And there's even like a, I'll say positive air quotes for those who are not watching, but it's like a positive, like, oh come on, don't be a buzzkill. Like, come on, have a drink, or come
Right.
on, do this, that, the other. And it's
Just
like they're trying to
enjoy
bring
it.
you in, and it's like, girl, me coming here was a struggle. Not because I don't want to see you fuckers. I do, and that's what makes it harder, is because I'm just going through my own personal shit that I don't want to talk about. And so I'm doing the best that I can. And it is nice to see you, but I'm not giving you what you think I should be giving you. And so now I feel like an asshole. You're trying to bring me in, and I don't want to be brought in. So now I feel even more like an asshole. And it's
Yeah.
and that's, I always find that to be the worst. I'd much rather you just be a dick to me. Also, people in my life, don't be a dick to me. But like, I'd much rather you do that than like try to be like, oh, come on, like let's be happy, because I'm like, no. Like, because when I know you're coming from a good place, that makes it 10 times worse. If you're just an asshole, I can write that off. I
Yeah.
can't write it off when it's coming from a good place. And then I
Guilt.
feel so much guilt and just
Yeah.
burden. Like, I feel like a burden. And I'm like, this isn't what the holidays are about. This isn't what I was promised. And no, it's like, that's exactly what the holidays are. The holidays aren't fun. Capitalism and consumerism tells you it's going to be fun. It's not fun, because you have
Yeah.
your different families, you have your friendsgivings and your friends parties, and you want to go to all of them. Don't get me wrong, but then there's also times where you're like you said, your body keeps score, and I'm like, girl, I've not slept. I'm
Mm.
tired. And it's not because I'm necessarily out partying. I'm stressing because I want to make sure that I get these things right. And so then I
Mm.
get to the party and I'm tired, and I'm like, but I got to push through it. So let's chug a monster beforehand. And then so then I crash. But because I like when I go home, but because I'm thinking, oh, did I say the right things? Did I do the right things? Did everybody have a great time? Even if I'm not fucking hosting, I'm like, did everyone have a great time? I
Mm.
don't fall asleep. I'm tired as fuck, but I'm still thinking. And so then eventually I'll like I used to say this and it would upset mom. And I understand now as I'm older why it upset her. But I used to tell her that I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that was just my thing. And she hated when I'd say that, because this was a lot in college and I just couldn't sleep because I had work and school and rehearsal and rinse and
Yeah.
repeat, and then I was like, oh no, looking back, I'm like, I could see why that would upset my mother. Just a daughter talking about, yeah, no, I'll die and I'll sleep, not bueno, but c'est la vie.
I mean, you can sleep after you're 30, I think is a better way to say it. I'll sleep after I'm 30.
Girl,
After my frontal lobe is finished forming, I'll sleep then. But again, like how these additional stressors can make things that we already deal with, like mental health issues, physical issues, way worse. And then it's just like a snowball effect. It's a spiral. Like that makes this worse, which then makes it worse, which then makes that worse. And like we just keep going in this thing where we're just getting worse and worse. And I think another thing you mentioned a little bit ago was like your dad, and we had talked about him during our grief and loss episode, and we talked about my mom during grief and loss episode, different reasons why we have the grief and loss related to them, but like we have that all year round, but the holidays are like prime time for those to be, for that grief to be made so much larger, right? Because
Mhm.
again, there is this like, this is the time for family. There are these thoughts and expectations about it. And so not having that person there is extra difficult. As you can probably tell by my rantings, Christmas is not my thing, but like my mom loved it. And so there are reasons why it makes me feel emotional that Christmases don't look the same way as they used to because she's not around. And it really takes these struggles that we're already having and makes them so much larger or like in our faces because there are these expectations, these like programming beliefs we have about what a holiday means and who it should be spent with.
Well, and then on top of it too, in regards to like grief and loss and all of that, it's like I know, I believe around Christmas time is when suicide rates spike.
Mm,
And so it's like, God forbid if you have someone in your life that took their life around this time, you then have to
mhm.
be like, fuck, okay, I now know I'm not going to see them. And, at
Yeah.
least with my father, there was a decision that had to be made. And let me be very clear, it was not a light decision. And there was a lot of grief, we've talked about it, that went into making that decision, and unfortunately your mom passed due to illness, but there again was some ramp up time.
Mm,
Oftentimes when it comes to suicide, you can potentially have some ramp up time. Like you could have where they're
yeah.
struggling, you can see that, but sometimes it's literally, I talked to this person yesterday. I
Yeah.
talked to this person last week. I had no idea. And it's like, and it's not like we had a bad relationship. We would talk about hard hitting topics, but for
Mhm.
some reason they didn't feel comfortable to share that with me. Not that I'm owed anything, but I just didn't see this coming. And
Yeah.
now there is a loss that suicide is something that is very, it's hard to personify, experience, or like what your experience would be around it, with someone passing for that in your life. But it's like, especially if it happens around the holidays, it's like you now are mourning this person in your life when you're supposed to be happy. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, now I feel guilty for feeling even remotely happy because I forgot about it for a minute. I was with my friend, my family, I was with whomever. Fuck, I'm a bad person for not thinking of them and getting that as well.
Yeah. But having both of those, right? Like I feel guilty that I'm not thinking of them and feeling sad, but also I feel guilty that I'm not being present with the people at this celebration and being happy in that way.
Right.
So like it can also be a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like there's not a easy solution to it where you're like, oh, I'll just focus here and that'll make it fine. There's going to be a constant back and forth, or there can be a constant back and forth in your brain of like this like fluctuating guilt. I still feel guilty either way. I still feel
Oh
like
yeah.
it's my fault or I'm doing something wrong either way. But the reason at any given moment might look different for why I'm feeling that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
This was,
know. Like it's like where the fuck do you go from there? I'm sorry
I
for
know,
breaking it
it's
down
okay.
so much.
Way to bring down the vibe, man. No, it's okay, but like I think that's it, right? Like even as we're having this conversation, recognizing that some of the shit that goes into why holidays are hard is just like sadness for other reasons. And all of these other factors and these things that we really don't have any choice in or have nothing to do with the holiday itself or the gathering itself. So, I mean, all that sadness, all of those things said, it it doesn't have to feel awful, right? Like there are things we can do to sort of set ourselves up for success when it comes to holidays, family gatherings, times when there's maybe these expectations so that we can, yeah, handle it a little bit better. And
So I'll say this for me
okay, girl.
personally, like one of the ways that like I handle it is understanding and like accepting it's okay to be sad.
Yeah.
Like and so just kind of being like, yeah, things fucking suck. Like there's the duality of like, man, I don't have to go to South Carolina. Fuck, that sucks. I don't have to go to South Carolina. And that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
and understanding, like looking that the pressure is there. And like, yes, I have to do all of this and that fucking sucks. Yes, it does. It does it not suck, and that's okay too. If you have to mask, that's okay. It doesn't make you a lesser person if you have to mask to get
Mm.
through it, you know? And that's a lot of like what I've kind of done for me personally, of just like kind of being able to look at everything and saying, yes, there are pros, yes, there are cons, maybe there's both, maybe there's neither, and just kind
Mm.
of accepting that as a whole. Sorry, I got
Yeah. You got
something you said
excited.
made me was like, "Ugh, no, we got to talk about acceptance." I was just like, it's okay to be sad.
It is okay to be sad, absolutely. Like, and sort of understanding that some of this is just out of your control. Like
Yeah.
the fact that your body is bracing for seasonal depression when it's not coming, that that is not something you choose. Like that is out of your control. The fact that, some people celebrate their holidays in these ways and other people do that, like that's out of our control. If we get that tickle me Elmo or not, like sometimes that's out of your control. So you can't give it to your kids, sort of thing. I think that's probably less of an issue now in the days of like online
Oh,
ordering than
but
back in
don't
the
worry,
day.
the your sibling can get your kid, you know, the annoying ass toy, and you're like, oh no, it disappeared. That's so crazy. But I
But
feel like
so,
you're talking more of like the Jingle All the Way, where it's like
yeah,
I
where
need
you
to
like,
get this main toy and I can't fucking find it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so, like, understanding that there are things that are out of your control and that we maybe sometimes need to be flexible. Like, maybe we don't make that second dessert. Maybe, heck, maybe we just say, I guess we're having KFC for dinner. Like, I know that's probably not your ideal Thanksgiving meal, but if everything is going wrong or there's been all these problems or you're stressed because of this other stuff, hey, KFC is still food, right? We can still gather and do the activity, even if it doesn't look the way maybe we thought it was going to look because it's ordered in food or it's like frozen meals instead of being like all fresh cooked by your nona or whatever. So accepting instead of neglecting your feelings. I'm sure we've talked about this before, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about it at length. It's something that I feel very strongly about, which is that there's this idea that as adults, I don't know if it's a cultural like the US or if it's like specifically Midwestern sort of thing and being like the strong Midwestern woman, but there's this sort of idea of like we have to hide our emotions, like, right, like our emotions are not appropriate, right? When we go and cry on our own, that's fine, but like showing our emotions is not appropriate. And especially when we talk about people who were raised male, like anger is the only acceptable emotion. You're happy, you're angry, and that's it. So we have this way of trying to push down our emotions and not feel them, and this is one of those times where we really need that emotional expression, guys. If we don't give ourselves the space to feel our feelings, then that's when they're going to build up and explode in some really unhelpful, unhealthy way, including having a breakdown at Thanksgiving and like having to go cry while you do the dishes and hide and have a miserable day. Like there's all different sorts of ways that can be. So really, again, accepting and not neglecting, giving ourselves space and time so that those emotions don't build up and end up, again, outweighing the positives we have, getting outweighed by all of these negative emotions that are sort of like building up in our system. And with that, again, it's like focus on the positives. Is it a perfect Christmas? I don't know. Probably not. Is there such a thing as a perfect Christmas? I've never had one. Does that mean they don't exist? I don't know. But there's still things to put our focus on, which a lot of these holidays were sort of based on, which is togetherness, right? Like being able to spend that time with people, having the time off, having the time to do something joyful during the crappiest months of the year, especially if you live in the north. But like having those positive things to do. That's why there's so many holidays in November, December, all the like winter months, is because these were like the saddest times of year where people, to be fair, couldn't be like necessarily doing some of the jobs they would do at the other times of the year, but also where it's like the darkest, coldest, longest part of the year, we put these celebrations intentionally to help lift our spirits, to bring light and lightness to the dark and heavy times. So trying to refocus on that point of the holidays, as opposed to what, again, maybe consumerism and commercialism has sort of told us that it's supposed to be or how it should look, and really trying to focus in on those positives that can be universal and are not dependent on performance, are not dependent on finances, are not dependent on comparison.
I find this for me where to focus on the positives, it might not even get to be related to what's happening. Where it's like,
Yeah.
you burnt the turkey, the bread sucks, the cousin forgot to bring the, mac and cheese, so now we don't have that side or whatever. And it's like, you know what? My hair looks good though.
Mhm.
And that has nothing to do with the holidays. And it's like, or you know what? I really like these pants. It's just kind
Yeah.
of almost doing like the 5 4 3 2 1, but like with
Yeah.
a very, you know what, that thing happened. My nails look fucking fired. Something of that nature. It's like my mascara gone, ruined. I've cried so many times. I accidentally yelled at the kids or whatever, and I said I'm sorry and I meant it, but it's still like,
Yeah.
they're now upset and that went poorly and, everything else, or, the sweater itches me and I just want to tear my skin off. But my lipstick looks really good and it went through the crying. Like that's, and it doesn't have to be something like that, but it's like, or it could even just be like, you know what, the decorations I put up look great. Or,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be related to the holidays. It doesn't have to be related to whatever. There's also just a gratefulness in general where you can just be like, I'm just happy that I have my family, or I'm
Mm.
just happy that in our case, it's like, I'm just happy I have my partner, and I also understand and makes it even more grateful for me. I know some people don't have that, whether or not they're single or whether or not their partner is not great.
Mm.
I can just kind of look across the table and say, I feel safe and goddamn does that feel good. And taking that moment in.
I think it's that counting your blessings sort of idea, which
Mhm.
can get toxic if we're like ignoring all of the negative or all of our needs or all of our feelings because we're like, we have to focus on the positive. Like, okay, that's not healthy. But just taking some time to like think through, oh, here are some good things that happened. An interesting activity is like doing 3 good things before bed, where you just look back every night before you go to bed and think about 3 good things that happened. Some days they are going to be bigger things, like I completed an assignment, I did this thing, but some days it's going to be like, hey, I got out of bed, I took a shower, and I actually ate something. So that is a win. And it's the same with the holidays, right? It might not be that the holiday went off without a hitch, but when she dropped those mashed potatoes, we all laughed and had like a hilarious time, right? Or we played that game and that thing worked. Or yeah, my fit was fire, even if it ended up covered in baby food by the end of the day. Like finding those small things that we can hold on to try to put our focus on instead of letting the, how do I say this, trying to find these positive things that we can intentionally put our focus on instead of
Mhm.
letting the spiral of the intrusive thoughts sort of win and drag us down. Because if we give our intrusive thoughts the wheel, if we do that, then they're always going to drag us down. But if we challenge
Oh yeah.
ourselves to be intentional about what we're focusing on, where we're putting our energy, where we're putting our thoughts, then there's a lot better chance that we're going to get through it and be able to feel good tomorrow too. Right? So not letting ourselves get stuck, because getting stuck is easy. And so it does take a little bit extra work for us sometimes to have to challenge that.
Life itself is tricky, and especially around the holidays, it can just become such, an overburdensome thing. So it's like, by all means, if you want to just vent in the comments and you're like, I had this garbage happen, do that,
Yeah.
or if you have a thing that you're grateful for or something that you personally utilize and say, like, listen, this is how I get through it, or, we're not asking you to kind of bare your soul. If you want to, great, but like, we're not here to exploit that. But it's like having conversations is super helpful, whether that's with random strangers on the internet or if it's with a therapist or if it's with, your family and your friends that you feel safe with.
And I mean, I definitely want to hear about anybody's weird traditions too. We bared our soul about
That's true.
circling up and all of our like weird family stuff. So, like, if your family's got a tradition that you didn't realize was weird until you went to someone else's house or tried to explain it, I would love to hear those things too. Because at the end of the day, life is weird, life is hard, but talking about our mental health shouldn't be.